Hey guys, it's Candace.
And it's Elena.
And you're listening to Cousins on Crime. My voice cracked just then.
Crying.
I'm going through puberty.
It happens.
Oh, man. Well, should we just jump into the episode? What do you think?
Let's do it. No hem-hawing around.
Sometimes we dilly-dally. Yeah, so maybe people don't like us dilly-dally.
Yeah.
So let's go.
Okay.
So I have a very sad case tonight, reminiscent of last week. A little bit, because it's just senseless. Just
Right.
pure and utter senselessness. Tequila Suter was born November 13th, 1987 in Oakland, California. Her parents were Carnell Guff, I believe that's pronounced, and Sharon Suter. They relocated their family to New Fane, New York, when Tequila was just a little girl, and then they later settled into Lockport, New York. She graduated from Lockport High School and then began working as a dietary aide for Presbyterian Nursing Home and later worked at a daycare. She loved working with kids, so much so that she really wanted to invest in them in a different way. Not just daycare, but she was actually working on her degree in child psychology and started working at Baker Victory Services as a mentor and counselor for young children. And there she really made a difference in these kids' lives. And for whatever reason, these children passed through those doors. It could have been a plethora of reasons, like they were in trouble with the law, or they came from an abusive household, or whatever it was. When they came into contact with Tequila, it was like divine intervention. One of those kids actually wrote on her obituary wall saying, "Unfortunately, I found out about this late. You helped me a lot in my time at BVS. I know I was an ignorant kid and didn't show my appreciation a lot, but I listened to your advices and took them to heart. I'm doing great now, and I'll never forget you. Thank you for everything."
Oh, that gives me chills.
Yeah, she made a difference even, maybe not at the time, but like her impact made a difference in their lives later on.
Right.
She didn't just serve the children of the community, though. She also served in the ministry of her church, which was called Kingdom Ministry. She was very active in her church and devoted to God and her friends and family. At the time of her death, she was working on her first sermon so that she could step up even more in her faith and take the next step in leading her congregation. She just had so much potential. Tequila's uncle said of her that she was the type of person, when you were with her, she made you feel like everything was going to be okay. And that really struck me, because just being in her presence, no matter what kind of day you were having, she made people feel at peace. And I would say that you're like that, Lena.
Oh, well, thank you. I try.
You know, after a long day of me slinging kids, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't have the energy to record tonight. But then I see you, and I suddenly have energy.
Oh, my heart.
So, but her family said that she really did manifest the fruits of the Spirit. Tequila lived alone at 29 Wilkes-Barre Street in the city of Lackawanna, New York.
Lackawanna.
On February 16th, 2014. Her friend came to pick her up for church one Sunday morning, and when she approached the door and knocked, Tequila didn't answer. Her friend waited a couple minutes, knocked again and again, you know, did that weird, you know, looking at a bush like she's looking at something, you know, being awkward.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my friend's not answering her door. The neighbors are going to wonder, why is somebody standing out here? Her friend went back to her car and called her brother. Like, her friend called her own brother, not Tequila's brother.
Okay.
So her friend called her brother because, you see, her brother actually worked for Tequila's landlord. So he had keys.
Oh, okay.
He could get keys and check on her. So she knew he'd be able to either tell her how to get in or just come over with keys. So it was very unusual that she wasn't answering, and I guess it was so unusual that she went to this length. Well, her brother did come over, and he made entry using a spare set of keys. And now he carries the mental image of finding Tequila dead in her home.
I'm so
with him
sorry.
for the rest of his life.
Oh, no.
He found Tequila in her bedroom. She was laying face down in a pool of blood, and it looked like there had been a struggle. There was like blood swipes and smears all over the floor, and the blood was dried. So they believed this didn't just happen, like it had happened a while ago. 911 was called. Of course, investigators arrived on scene and surveyed Tequila's home. And it appeared at first that she had suffered multiple sharp force injuries and had one very sizable slash to her neck. Of course, they wouldn't know it then, but a later autopsy would reveal that she had been stabbed 39 times.
Oh, Lord.
39. I can't do 39 crunches.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
to think of someone doing that 39 times,
No.
Ugh.
Poor thing.
There were signs of a cleanup, too. There was blood in the bathroom, in the bathtub, like on the walls, and also luminol testing revealed a shocking sight. Blood all over the place that had been cleaned up. So they knew that someone had hastily probably showered, you know, cleaned it all up off the floor, wiped it all up, but not all of it. Nothing really seemed to be out of place. It didn't look like she'd been robbed or anything like that. But there was one thing missing. Tequila's cell phone. They couldn't find it. So where was it?
Right.
Why did someone take it? You know, what was on that phone that couldn't be found?
Incriminating evidence.
Right. Well, police hit the streets, talking to friends and family, trying to figure out what was going on in her life that could have led to this. Tequila's best friend Ashley said one day, about a week or so before her murder, her and Tequila were out shopping, and Tequila's card got declined, like her debit card, which had never happened before, and she was, like, a little bit embarrassed, you know, understandably. So she logged into her bank account to see what had happened, and she noticed a very hefty charge. I think it was something like $600 that she didn't make. So she ended up actually, I don't know if she called her bank first, but she called the police department to make a report about it. She wanted them to investigate it. In fact, one of the detectives that arrived on the scene of her murder, when he learned the victim's name, he was like, oh, I literally just talked to her like days ago about some missing money from her bank account. And he was like, that gives me chills because I just talked to her. And now they're wondering if maybe this has something to do with her murder. So police checked with the merchant who accepted the payment. That was pretty much a dead end. They went to her bank's ATM to see if maybe someone had her PIN and was withdrawing money. Surveillance wasn't working, so that was a dead end. Yeah. So they also learned that Tequila had a boyfriend at the time. She had been dating a guy named Damani Hall for several months. And according to her best friend Ashley, they seemed pretty happy. He was a church-going guy. You know, it's always the church-going ones that are the good guys.
Right.
He didn't get himself into trouble. He was, I think, going to college as well. And he was actually in church when someone leaned up from behind him and said, "Hey, did you hear about Tequila?" And so, naturally, investigators want to talk to this guy, first and foremost. So, Damani came into the station to speak with police. He was chill. He spoke to investigators and, answered their questions. He said he went over to see Tequila at her home on February 15th, which is the day before she was found murdered.
Interesting.
He said that they were actually in the middle of a breakup, and they were trying to talk things out as far as whether or not they were going to be able to make it work. There was some kind of jealousy going on. But he said she wanted to break it off, but he wanted to stay together. So they were discussing things. He said they had been arguing, so he left before things got too heated. He said, "I'm going to give you your space." And that was around 5 p.m. And he told her he'd be back the next day to get his things because apparently it was over. And he said, "I'll be back tomorrow. I'll give you your space. I'll come back."
Well, how kind.
Yeah, isn't that so nice? He said when he left, he turned to look at her, to get some kind of reaction like, "Hey, I'm leaving. Do you even care?" And he said that she was on her phone and just kind of turned her head and glanced at him and just didn't really care that he was leaving. So their interest was piqued when he said she was on her phone when he left.
Right.
Because remember, they hadn't located her cell phone. So they believed whoever killed her likely took her phone. So they needed to get that cell tower data and quick.
Yes.
He got emotional a few times during the interview. He started crying. And police felt he was very sincere and calm. And, he did give them a lot of information, a lot of details, times, and he didn't seem to be hiding anything. So he actually also voluntarily pulled up his Facebook and text conversations that he and Tequila had been having and showed them. He even handed one of the detectives his cell phone. And the detective was flicking through it. So, seems legit. He says after he left, he went to a local corner store to get some hair product and some other things, and then he called a friend for a ride downtown to the bus station. From there, he took a bus to another friend's house and stayed there that night. He said, "You can talk to them, they'll tell you I was there." And he said, "Oh, and one more thing. I continued talking to Tequila that night. We continued texting back and forth all night. So I think she was fine when I left. She was fine after I left," is what he was saying. He said, he still wanted to work things out, so he was still trying after he had left. Police checked with his friends, and they verified that Damani, in fact, did come stay with them that night. So, just like he said, okay, great. They've got that piece of it, but what about the time between when he left her apartment and when he arrived at the friend's apartment? So, they ended up visiting that corner store to get CCTV footage from that night, and they saw him there. And I'm going to describe what happens in the video if you want to close your eyes and think of a cold, dark February night. So Damani walks into the store. He seems fine. He walks in slowly. He's wearing a big warm coat, gloves, a beanie with a big puff ball on top. And they're able to positively say, that's him. He's got a backpack on. He's also carrying a white plastic bag. Not like one of those flimsy thank you grocery store bags, but a thicker one. Say you went to the mall and bought a pair of shoes.
Okay.
And they put it in a nice, thick plastic bag.
Gotcha.
So, one of those. And he gets his items, he checks out. He's chatting to the cashier for a second. And when he's done, he kind of turns around and there's another shopper standing there. He smiles and says something to him. And it's just a very normal seeming video.
Right.
Like, there was nothing extraordinary about it. So, while they're tracking down the footage from the bus that Damani said he took, Detective Laxo gets a call from another police officer that said, well, Tequila didn't actually live alone. One of her youths that she was mentoring had been staying with her.
Oh.
So, since this girl had been in trouble with the law, she was being monitored by police.
Oh.
And this police officer had Tequila's name in this girl's file. So when Tequila was murdered and he heard about it, this police officer was like, we need to just kind of look into this. She was young, but it wasn't impossible that she could have murdered Tequila.
Right.
You know? Maybe she's the one who stole the money, and when confronted about it, she killed Tequila to get away with it.
Okay.
Well, what if it was that easy to solve a crime?
Right.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Just like last week's.
So they spoke to this girl. She had an alibi for that day, and it checked out. Another dead end. But while they were waiting on the cell tower data to download, that took hours, they ended up pulling Tequila's phone records. So who she was calling. Maybe they could learn more about the conversation she was having that led up to her death and who she was talking to.
Right.
Around 5 p.m., when Damani said he left her apartment, who was she talking to? Because that's important. They saw the text between her and Damani continuing past 5 p.m., like he said. They verified it looked like the subject matter was what he said. They were talking about their breakup and sounded like she didn't want to be with him and he wanted to be with her. So everything's really checking out for him. Around this time, they acquired another piece of the puzzle. The bus footage was in. So they queued up the tape around 6 p.m., which would have been around the time Damani took the bus to his friend's house. Now, come with me on the bus, and I'll describe the footage for you.
I'm already there, girl.
So, I know. So, Damani climbs aboard the bus, and he swipes his card. He takes his seat. He places the white bag on the seat next to him. He places his backpack in between his feet on the floor. Very normal. On the journey, he's looking down at his phone. He was texting. He ended up putting the white bag in his lap at one point, sort of wrapped his arms around it at one time. Then he opened it a couple times and looked inside, and then rolled it back, closed it back up, and nothing weird. They'd already preliminarily confirmed that Damani went to his friend Latifah's apartment. But they wanted to bring her in to get a little more information about the remainder of the evening.
Right.
So she and her cousin came into the station. Her cousin was actually staying with her that night that Damani came over, so they wanted to talk to both of them. They were cousins on crime. They just didn't know it yet.
Right.
They asked the women what he was wearing when he arrived and what he had with him. She described his clothing, and it was the same clothing that he was wearing in the footage from the corner store and the bus. So no Alex Murdaugh wardrobe changes there. Sorry, I'm not over that. She described, he also had a backpack, and the detective said, and the white plastic bag, and she said, no, he didn't have a white plastic bag with him.
Oh.
He didn't bring over any white plastic bag? Interesting. She also mentioned he had 2 cell phones with him.
Oh.
A black one and a white one.
How did I know you were going to say that?
What? Well, guess what color Tequila's missing cell phone was?
White.
It was white. So they were like, let's watch that bus footage again, because maybe he got up and mistakenly left the white bag on board when he got off at a stop. There could be an innocent explanation. But before they got to the part where he gets off the bus, he ended up pulling out a white cell phone from underneath his shirt and quickly put it in his jacket pocket.
Wow.
now they see it with their own eyes that he had her phone. They had missed it the first time around. I mean, it's a really quick, it's flick of the wrist. It's sleight of hand, magician type stuff. It was really quick. But they see it now clear as day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they finish watching, and the part where he gets off the bus, he took the white bag with him. So, where was it now?
Oh, right. In the trash can somewhere.
Lena, you're reading my notes. The investigators brought Damani in a second time and confronted him about the cell phone that his friend said that he had that night and the CCTV footage of him appearing to conceal a white cell phone on the bus. And the tone of the interview, this one, was very different than the first one. Now they're treating him like a suspect. And he said, oh, yeah, that phone, I found that in the snow. It was just near the bus stop. He's like, the Android? Yeah, he's like, I found it, I picked it up, and when I realized I couldn't use it, I just threw it away.
Right.
Well, they said, if it was unusable, why were you using it all night? Your friend told us that you were using a black phone and a white phone, and you were texting with both phones all night. They watched you do it. And you can tell in that interrogation, like, Damani's whole cool, relaxed vibe, you know, starts to really slip. And now he's looking nervous. And it's about then that he says, well, if y'all are going to keep talking like this, I think I need an attorney. And just like that, the interview was over. And that sucked, but you know what? They knew they were onto something. They knew they were onto something. And he's not talking anymore, and that's fine. And without more evidence, they really didn't have enough tying him to the crime. They needed to find that phone, and they needed to find that white bag. So they start dumpster diving around the area of the bus stop, because they're like, well, he ditched it somewhere.
Right.
On the way to Latifah's house. So they were like, we're going to start at the bus and work our way to Latifah's. They dug and dug for hours, coming up with nothing but old takeout containers and festering garbage.
Right.
And this is a little triggering for me, because one year at church camp, I accidentally threw away my retainer at lunch. And it was nacho day. And I had to dig through like 3 garbage cans to find it.
But you
and
found it.
I can just smell it now. I ended up finding it, yes.
I bet you didn't make that mistake again.
Never did. Never, ever, ever did. But like me, the police were on a mission, and they weren't stopping now. They kept digging. They ended up reaching Tequila's house, and in the back they saw 2 trash cans. They thought, now surely it's not going to be in her backyard.
Yeah.
Like,
how easy can this be?
Right. A police officer opened the one on the right. She lifted a black garbage bag up, and just below it was a white plastic bag.
Dude.
And this white plastic bag had a Price Right logo on it, which could be seen in the CCTV footage, clear as day. They gently opened the bag and could not believe what they saw. It contained a disposable mop head soaked in blood.
Oh, my
2
Lord.
knives covered in blood. Women and men's clothing covered in blood. It was everything they needed to arrest Damani Hall. So, just because they had their man, investigators didn't stop looking for more evidence. They still hadn't found that phone, right?
Right.
And they wanted to make sure that he never walked among the free ever again. They ended up finding Tequila's cell phone. It was like badly damaged. It looked like someone stomped on it, you know, to probably try and get rid of evidence.
Right.
But they were able to verify all those texts and Facebook activity. All that was done after Tequila had died.
Oh, wow.
So it was him on her Facebook making posts,
Oh my.
messaging him, doing all this stuff. Now, the day after his arrest, at his arraignment, he pled not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
But later, he changed his plea to guilty to second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. At his sentencing, the judge gave him an opportunity to speak. I personally, in the last episode, I said I love a good
Impact statement.
Impact statement. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I don't love a defendant gets to speak statement.
Yeah.
I think it's like they got to speak with their actions.
Yeah.
And that's that. But, I'm a hardball. That's who I am.
Right.
Damani did decide to speak. He turned and he faced Tequila's family and he said, I understand there aren't words to describe what you are going through. As long as you know it wasn't intentional, I pray that the peace of God will be with you. And I say, get God's name out your mouth, okay? Well, the judge was not going to give him time and space to talk mess in his courtroom.
Right.
The judge said angrily, let's set the record straight. It was intentional murder that you pled guilty
Absolutely.
to. It was no accident. You didn't black out. You were enraged with jealousy. And I mean, this judge was pointing the finger, shouting at him, putting him in his place. I loved it.
I wish I could have been there.
Yeah. Damani, like I said, was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison and was led away to jail wearing his new prison duds. Damani was just 21.
Oh,
Tequila
wow.
was 26. Just a waste. He is serving his sentence at Attica Correction Facility in Wyoming County, New York. And something I stumbled across, which I wish I hadn't. And actually, I kept ignoring the video because I thought it was somebody different because it wasn't in prison. He was wearing like a polo shirt and khakis, and I was like, no way this guy's out. So I just kept ignoring it. But the more I looked at it, I was like, that's him.
No.
So, Damani Hall was being honored in prison.
What?
And it made my stomach turn. He gave a TED Talk
What?
in prison about his ministry in prison and blah, blah, blah. And Elena, I'm sure you may have differing views.
I mean, I know people
this.
can change their heart. Yes, they can change. God can change people. I truly, honestly believe that.
Sure.
But he used God in all of this as to get close to Tequila, and no, that makes
Yeah, and it's great that he found God and he's helping others, and that's great for his soul. Okay, that does nothing for Tequila's family. That's not something we need to praise him for. He does not get any accolades.
Right.
He wouldn't be ministering to people in prison if he hadn't done what he done.
Right.
He would be ministering to people elsewhere, and then we could praise him for that. But no, you don't. Plain and simple, you're a murderer, and you don't get to be featured on a TED by Attica TED Talk of all these amazing prisoners of what they're doing. Disgusting. He chose to drive that knife into Tequila 39 times. 39.
Yeah.
He had 39 opportunities to stop that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and how old was he when he got out?
No, he's not out.
Oh, okay.
He's not out of prison.
Okay, he just did a TED Talk.
Yeah, he got to do this TED Talk, and it was gross. I watched like 3 seconds of it to make sure it was him, and then I was like, what is this? So I went to their website, and they do a little blurb about each inmate that speaks.
Yeah.
And no mention of his crime. No mention of his victim. Just about Damani and what he's doing, and he destroyed a priceless work of art. This is how I look at it.
Yeah.
You don't just get to come off to the side and do some finger painting and say, well, God bless me. No, look at the damage that you did. Look at the painting that you shredded and destroyed. Nothing makes that whole again. Not ministering to others and not giving a TED Talk, none of that undies. None of that undoes what he did. I mean, I'm fired up right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for me. Like I said, how old was he when he did the TED Talk? Not that it really matters, but do you know, like, how long was he in prison?
What? I don't know. I think it was something like 10 years later or something after he went into prison.
But, I mean, yeah, it's just hard for me. How can you murder someone and then change your heart to be this good person? But, I mean, God forgives everybody. I mean, you ask God for forgiveness and he will forgive you if your heart is pure and honest. And only God can say if his heart is true, you know, and
yeah.
I try to see people through God's eyes, and so that's how you get compassion for people. And so, yeah, I want him to be a good person. I want him to really love God and be forgiven. But seeing the path of how this happened, and he was going to church and, you know, supposedly living a good life, and he murdered her anyway. So, it's...
Yeah, I'm glad you see the people through God's eyes, because I don't.
Well,
I mean, I think that his behavior, his change of heart, I found God, that affects him and him alone.
Right.
His soul.
Right.
And maybe he is being kind to other inmates and whatever, ministering, whatever he's doing, but I cannot get past. I mean, there's just some things that you do that the consequences are so dire, and there's just no undoing what he's done. And I can't believe that if you make a program for prisoners to do good, that's great.
Right.
But don't tell me about it. Don't make a website. Don't share it with the public, because we don't care what y'all are doing in prison.
For them to have the opportunity to do something that they would be doing outside of prison. Like, they're in prison for a reason. Like, prison isn't supposed to be fun.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you want to, like, learn how to cut hair and you want to get a degree in prison, that's great.
Yeah.
But that affects you. Like, that makes your time go better in prison, or makes you lay your head on the pillow at night and, you know, have peace about your life. But I mean, it's so hard for me to forgive and forget.
Right. Well, like, and I mean,
it's just,
on the other hand, there are people out there that may watch this video that need to hear a message of God. And maybe, I mean, I didn't watch the video, so I don't know what was said on it or whatever, but maybe his testimony, what he's lived, you know, he was 21 years old and he made an absolutely horrific mistake.
But it's
not a mistake. I know, for lack of better words. And now if he truly has changed his heart, he's got this testimony where it could help other people who, I don't know. I don't know what I'm...
He has something inside of him to where he can't just have a breakup with a girl.
Right.
Can't just break up with a girl. Can't just... No.
Yeah.
Can't have a breakup. gotta go get 2 knives.
Right.
And then, and what's so chilling, oops, just busted my mic. And what's so chilling is the CCTV footage.
Yeah, I mean,
of the moments after he murdered, and he's shooting the breeze with people, and he's calm, cool, and he's carrying a bag of blood-soaked items and the knives he used to just murder his girlfriend. And he's carrying this around.
Yeah.
Going to get hair grease, going on the bus.
Yeah.
You know,
he seemed really just too good at what he did.
He was, and that's the thing. If you look up his interrogation, the first one, he's so convincing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so calm. He's like, yeah, she had her phone, and the way he describes the way she was on her phone, you think to yourself, well, why would somebody make up that she's on her phone and she turned to the side, and it was just too specific. And anyway, he was too good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that. And he had
something in him. And so stay in prison. Never get out, because at any moment you could do that again.
Yeah.
And you have that in you.
I agree
You've
with
proven that there's a trigger there. And it just fires me right up when people say, oh, God bless. And it's just like, no. Yeah. No.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I draw the line, is like, yes, I hope your heart is right, but don't use God to manipulate people. That absolutely infuriates me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I could go on.
Yeah.
But I think we'll just
leave it
wrap
at that.
Right up.
Yeah.
I feel like this is such a copy and paste every time I end a story, but I always go back to the victim's family.
Mm-hmm.
And we tell these stories all the time. Sometimes justice is served, and that is great.
Right.
That's the best case scenario. For the damage that's been done, when a sentence was handed down for Damani and he was escorted out of the courtroom to begin his sentence, that's not the end of the nightmare for her family. Mm. It's the beginning of a long road of healing.
Right.
And that long road will wind and last for the rest of their lives. They'll feel that loss and spend the rest of their lives feeling her absence every birthday, holiday, just a regular old day, while they're at church sitting there thinking, well, if Tequila were alive, she would be sitting right next to me.
Right.
I pray that I never know that kind of heartache, because every time I read these stories, I always feel such a heaviness for the families. Yeah. I just can't imagine having to go on having something so brutal done to your loved one. But it's a true story. These are real people, and it just always hits me.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Every time.
Yeah. And that's why we tell these stories, to kind of show some respect to the victim and their family.
And I hope it does come across that way. I know we laugh.
Absolutely.
And I know we joke, and we have our lighthearted moments, but I really do hope that if a victim's family listens to the episode on their loved one, that they are proud that we are telling their story.
Exactly.
And not offended in any way. I certainly would never want that.
Right.
But this was great. Let's do it again sometime.
All right, let's do it.
Bye, guys. See you next week.
Bye. Well, thank you for listening to Cousins on Crime. If you're enjoying our podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating so that other true crime fans can find us.
If you have any case suggestions or just want to say hey, email us at cousinsoncrime@gmail.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram, where we post case photos and information at Cousins on Crime Podcast.